You can't have epistemology without ontology, and vice versa.
You
Okay?
can't have ontology without epistemology?
You can't. They're reciprocal. You need them both.
Sure.
They're sort of the same thing. It's just we can talk about them differently or separately. At least in my
but
view.
like, if I don't exist, the nature of reality is still the case, right?
Well, what worldview are you speaking from?
Well, I'm asking from yours, just a clarifying question, like in the sense that, would you agree that the ontological nature of the world is necessary for my epistemology to make sense? But my epistemology doesn't have to exist for the nature of the world to make sense, or to exist, more like.
Yeah, you're not making yourself clear.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I mean is, for me to exist, there has to be some facts about reality, right?
Are you making an assertion from your worldview?
I'm asking you.
What's your question?
So I'm just trying to clarify in the sense that.
Yeah, you know
So
what?
there has to be-
Do me a favor. Do me a favor. Collect your thoughts. Think about it for a couple minutes, then I'll unmute you. You're wasting my time right now. Okay. Next.
I'm trying to get that file, but it's actually proving more challenging than I expected.
What kind of device is it on?
It's in a Kindle format because I purchased it from Amazon.
Is it on a tablet or computer?
No, right now it's just in the cloud. I'm trying to get it on my phone, and then I can copy it off my phone. That seems to be the only way to.
Okay, well, you can log onto a computer, and you can and have the Kindle app, and you can.
You can have the Kindle app on Mac or Windows, but I don't run either of those, so no, I can't.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, Sir Captain, you got your thoughts together now?
Oh yeah. Yeah, sorry if it wasn't clear before. Oh yeah, let me just. So I was just asking you about. Obviously, we have our epistemology, right? And then there is the nature of reality outside of that.
What do you mean our epistemology? You're an atheist. Okay, your epistemology would be antithetical to mine.
Sure, I understand. I just mean that there is epistemology, which is contingent on a human mind, and then there is the aspect of all reality outside of that. And so when you're saying that they're both intertwined, essentially, I just want to clarify that you would agree.
They're reciprocal.
Sure, but the truth about ultimate reality would still be the case even if I didn't exist, right?
Yeah, whatever is ultimate, namely God. If God were to make you disappear, God would still exist because He's necessary. He cannot not exist.
Sure, I understand. So it would mean
you're not. In Hebrews 3, it says God, Christ, upholds all things by the power of His will. If God ceased to will, if He ceased to will it, everything would not exist except for God. The only reason why anything was instantiated in existence and continues in existence is because God wills it.
Sure, I sort of trying to understand when you say that they're reciprocal, but it seems that one is dependent on the other, whereas the other is not dependent on the other. Being that
ontology. In order to come to know ontology, you're going to have a viable epistemology, okay, and vice versa. You're going to have a viable ontology in order to have a viable ontology. Excuse me, you have to need a viable ontology in order to have a viable epistemology. They are reciprocal. They depend upon each other. You cannot have one without the other.
Symbiotic.
I understand. Don't you though have to use your epistemology to then have an ontology?
Yeah, I said that. The starting point, the method, and the conclusion are all involved in each other. It's reciprocal.
Yeah, I understand. But to actually justify that the ontology is true, don't you have to accept that your epistemology is true first?
You have to have them both at one stroke, dude.
Well, the epistemology itself, the foundation for knowledge, has to be there. Okay. And in the Christian worldview, that's granted to us by God foundationally whether or not we know how to articulate it.
Sure. And how do you know that it's granted by God?
Say that again?
How do you know that it's granted by God?
Because God revealed it. How else would I know? How else could you know something, anything at all, if it were not some aspect of God's revelatory actions? How could you know anything?
Well, I'm just wondering
I'm trying to explain it to you by asking you a question to show you the non-acceptance of what I said leads to complete metaphysical collapse, incoherency. Can anything be known independent and irrespective of God's revelatory actions? And revelatory actions is much broader than merely God speaking to an individual or maybe guiding somebody to write the book of Romans. It involves creating trees and rocks. It involves creating neurology and breathing the breath of life so that Adam had a cognition foundationally that was like God's mind. Okay, these are all revelatory actions. Okay, so when you ask me, how do I know this? How do I know that? It's going to be some aspect or facet of God's revelatory actions. Now, if you know of another way, independent and irrespective of knowing anything or something that does not derive and depend on any of God's revelatory actions, I'd like to hear it. Do you know of such a thing?
No, I don't. But I'm just
so do you object that an omnipotent, omniscient, always truth revealing God who has a salvific plan and has constructed the world in such a way that I can know some things, do you object that such a frame of reference can provide a way for us to know things?
Oh, if God exists, then sure.
Okay. Well, then, if there wasn't God and his revelatory actions, do you have any sort of conception of how you could know anything at all?
No, but I'm just wondering: is the inability?
Fine. So you don't. Now, do you believe in God?
No, but I'd like to ask you a question on that.
Okay. So I want everyone to pay attention to what he just said. Okay, he knows of no other way, independent of revelatory actions, if the God of the Bible exists, by which he can know things. And I just asked him, do you know that God do you accept that God exists? And he said no. Okay, so everybody keep that in mind.
So that means he doesn't know anything then.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, Sir Captain.
Sure. I'm just wondering, did you determine the necessity of this method by God granting it because you don't know of any other way?
No. It's not a matter that there could not be any other way, and that would be impossible because God is the ground of all being.
Well, God being the ground of all being from a metaphysical aspect doesn't necessarily, on that fact, justify him being it epistemologically.
Okay. Is that true?
Yeah.
And how did you come to know that?
Through my senses, I guess.
Wow.
Wow, are you so self-unaware?
You don't have a way to know anything absent revelation.
That's right. You're so self-unaware. You just said 2 minutes ago you have no way of knowing anything.
Well, I'm more trying to ask you from your worldview.
No. All right, listen. I want everyone in the room to notice.
Being dishonest.
Okay, I want everyone in the room. Here we have Sir Captain. The sinfulness is on full display here because he just got pointed out that he admitted 2 minutes ago he knows of no way that can ground or provide for knowledge. Yet now he's making a knowledge statement and saying that he grounds it in his senses. You have just contradicted yourself.
Well, only if I take the way you define knowledge.
No, sir. Listen, dude. You are about to be server muted for your absolute deceit. You are being deceitful. Now, when I asked you how you know it, you said you grounded knowing it through sense perception. But 3 minutes ago, I said, other than God's revelatory actions, is there any other way that you can actually know anything? Do you know of any other way? And you said, no, you do not know of any other way. Now you claim that you do have a way. So you've contradicted yourself, didn't you?
Sure. That's okay though. I'm done now. I just wanted to clarify that one point with you regarding the.
No, so you contradict. Okay, good. Okay, so you contradicted yourself, which is not surprising for atheists. So you shouldn't be talking about that you require demonstration, proof, or evidence for anything, because you've just conceded in your worldview as an atheist there is no grounding or way to know anything. So then why are you an atheist then?
Oh, sorry. No, I'm good now. I just wanted to clarify that one point.
So and now we have the running away like a little girly man. Why are you an atheist?
That's not fair to girly men.
Okay, it says here you're an atheist. Why are you an atheist? See? Now, what we just saw here was what Greg Bonson calls shutting the mouths of unbelievers who challenge the living God. We just saw this man shut his mouth voluntarily because his position has been exposed as completely incoherent and unintelligible in his refusal to repent and turn to the God whom he knows exists, who is the necessary precondition for all facts, including human reason and knowledge itself. In his refusal to do so, okay, he still wants to maintain that he's an atheist, and he will say something to the effect, oh, I don't have evidence for God, or I don't have reasons to believe. But he just admitted that there are no grounds whatsoever by which he could know anything. So the point is, you should then even remove the name atheist. You should not be self-identifying anything. You should not be in the position of making any truth propositions or knowledge statements whatsoever. But do you think he's going to stop doing that, folks? No, because atheists contradict themselves. They're self-refuting. Do they care that they're self-refuting? No, they don't, because all they care about is one thing, and that is, I will not have this man rule over me. I will not have Jesus Christ rule over me, and that's all.
Thank you. That's what I'm saying. Religion is a belief, and it's something. Oh, fuck! I can't find the words.
JC, please do not multiple people talk, or you're going to get muted. Okay.
What?
Now, listen to me carefully. Listen to me carefully.
I'm listening.
Shut your mouth, or you're going to get server muted.
That's kind of rude.
One more warning. Do you want to be server muted?
I mean, go ahead.
Shut your mouth.
You're so bored.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Anybody else?
You sound like a helium balloon deflating.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I can't even tell who's talking because there's so many people in here. There is a lot of people.
Okay, here comes the teen trolls.
It's okay. We're gonna mute them, and we're not gonna show any mercy, are we, Tonlock?
No, not to these guys. Hell no.
No. Okay. So we clearly saw we had Sir Smits, then we had the next guy, and even Dutch Idiot. We see one atheist after another completely fall on their sword. Okay. And that's why we are demolishing atheism. Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, what is the what are we supposed to talk about in this voice chat exactly?
Well, we talk about a variety of different topics, but the central topic that we spend time on is Christianity, the coherence and intelligibility of Christianity versus the incoherency and unintelligibility of atheism. And we're here to help atheists to realize that atheism is incoherent.
So this is like a conversion voice chat?
Well, we're not trying to convert them. We're trying to show them that the roadblock to their eternal destiny, to their eternal life, is they have to give up this notion that atheism is incoherent. Once we do that, then we can show them that the God of the Bible is the only fundamental unifying first principle that we must start with. Otherwise, we cannot have meaning or intelligibility or reason for anything. And by them realizing that, they can come to know that they have to repent. Otherwise, they're going to face the wrath of God when their heart stops.
Okay, I have another question then. What is your view on agnosticism?
Agnosticism is an indirect denial of the existence of God.
It's
But
atheism in drag.
yeah, it's atheism in drag. Agnostics fool themselves by saying, "Oh, but I'm willing," or they'll say, "I'm not making any statements I'm not making a universal negative that God does or does not exist." But in fact, they are making a universal negative in their total reliance on themselves, and that facts are standalone. If they can rely on themselves and that facts are standalone, and neither of those must reference God as the unifying first principle in existence, then that's a denial of God indirectly, in spite of the fact they say they're willing. If they were willing, they would start with God as the first unifying principle of all facts, but they're not willing. They've just decided that right now God is not necessary as the first unifying first principle of all facts. But maybe tomorrow, maybe later on tonight or tomorrow or next week, I'll be willing for you to adopt that. But right now, they're not. So they're not willing.
So then, if that's your viewpoint of agnosticism and atheism, what is your viewpoint on other religions that also have one God, like Catholicism and or Christianity?
Well, the only true God is the God who's represented in the Bible. But we have aberrant groups that claim to follow Jesus Christ, but they're simply following the traditions of men, like Catholicism and other denominations.
So you're talking about like Judaism?
That is contemporary Judaism is following the traditions of men. The Jews have a long history, and by the way, I'm not anti-Jewish. I'm very pro-Israel, but the Jews have a long history of disobedience toward God, just like you and I do as human beings. Okay, and so the Jews frequently would reject God's continued progressive revelation, which they also did in his final revelation in the person of Jesus Christ. And when in my view of prophecy, when Christ returns, that Israel will be surrounded by its enemies, and some of them will come to believe before that, and then they will recognize that Christ is the Messiah when he comes to save them from national destruction. But that's my particular view of prophecy. There are other Christians who don't share that view.
So are you saying that you are trying to prove that God is the sole unification, but
God is the unifying first principle, unifying in that all facts must derive and depend upon him. God is the most foundational truth in order for there to be any other truths. God is the most foundational Let me finish. God is the most foundational unifying truth without which you couldn't have any other truths. That's why I say unifying, foundational and unifying.
Okay, so what about Islam, like Allah?
Allah doesn't exist. Muhammad was just an illiterate moron who didn't know anything about theology or philosophy, and he just made up crap as he went along. He was so sloppy, he didn't even represent the doctrine of the Trinity that he was condemning. He thought that the Trinity were three separate gods, Allah, Jesus, and Mary. So not only did he not understand the Trinitarian conceptualization of God, that God is one being, one God, but he is three persons in one being in absolute unity. He thought God was a triad of three separate gods, one of whom he thought was Mary. But the Christians never taught that. That's just for starters. Okay?
I disagree.
Okay, good. Well, in Surah 4 and 5, we see that clearly. Would you like to go and read those verses with me?
Well, it's kind of late at night, but I can't talk. But I know that the biggest sin for a Muslim is to say that there's another God. So I doubt that there's that Muhammad told us.
Yeah, that's
that
because you've been
Muslims
brainwashed. That's
get
because
all
you've
of
been
God.
brainwashed that God has to be a monad, meaning a single person in one being.
Why would you say you disagreed and not the?
Yeah. Are you a Muslim?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you see, you've been brainwashed by Islam and your culture to believe that God cannot be three persons in absolute unity as one God. Okay.
Well, that
Why?
divides
Why
his power.
can't? Hold on a second. Do you think that you would have a logical defeater of why God cannot be an absolute single being who possesses diversity and plurality within himself?
Well, if God is a singular thing, then he's stronger. His
No,
power is
you're
one.
not understanding my question. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not understanding.
Okay. All the only reason why you oppose the doctrine of the Trinity is because that's what Islam has taught you. Okay, because you've been brainwashed to believe that the only way that God can exist is that if his unity demands that unity only be possess one person rather than a plurality of persons within absolute unity. Now, here's the interesting point. As a Muslim, do you think the concept of God possessing unity and diversity and equal ultimacy as exemplified by the Trinity, do you think that that's not coherent?
I don't know.
Well, that's what Islam teaches you, that it is not coherent, that there is one God, one being who subsists as a plurality of persons within absolute unity. That's what we call unity and diversity and equal ultimacy. And Islam says that that's false. You aware of that?
Yes.
Guess what? Do you know the world that you live in? Do you have a coherent apprehension of this world?
No.
You don't? Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Next.
Ah!
I don't think God is like the ultimate savior
what
of
is?
like our earth.
Then
Just
who
like
is or what?
because every religion has a different belief
So
in
what?
what they believe as
So
to be.
what?
It's just
So
I'm
what?
just saying that God in
Well, then what you're
Christianity
okay?
cannot be the
Well, here's the
sole
problem.
thing that
Hold on a second.
supports
How do you
everything
know?
for the
All right.
entire world.
All right. I'm going to take care of this first.
Now,
Never mind. You got him.
now, what you're saying is the triune God of the Christian scriptures cannot be. On what grounds do you say that?
I'm saying that God is not the belief of everybody and what he
So
does
what?
in
So
his
what? Okay, all right, slow down. So what if everybody doesn't believe in God? So?
it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that he is the sole like thing that will
Oh, okay. All right. So now I understand. Okay. So the problem here, the problem here is you and I are operating under two different understandings and conceptualizations of God. Okay. So that's why we're kind of talking past each other. See, my view of God is that God is what is ultimate, absolute, and unconditionally non-dependent. Everything else God brought into existence. He created into nothing the world, and the world only exists, excuse me, out of dependence upon God and his will. So we have a giant circle that has God in it, and then an arrow down to the lower right hand corner in a small circle that says the creation. So there's God, and then there's the distinction of the creation. You have a conception of God where God is some type of unimaginably powerful mind who is a superintendent within the cosmos of the universe. Is that how you see it?
okay. So I am Roman Catholic. I was brought up Roman Catholic my entire life.
I was raised Catholic as well.
But what I realized as I got older is that what I was told is not everything that I believe to be true.
You believe in evolution?
I don't believe that some magical thing called God that we believe in just somehow created a huge amount of mass that which upon creatures would live and thrive for billions of years until the sun explodes.
Well, hold on a second. Why don't you believe that?
I don't believe that because I feel like there's a more scientific reason to base off why the Earth was created itself.
Yeah, so do you believe in evolution?
Okay, so we have to be more basic than that. First of all, do you believe that there is an eternal mind that is the only thing that is eternal and absolute that we call God that instituted the world or creation? Do you believe that?
I believe in the fact that there was. I believe in the Big Bang Theory.
No, stop. You need to focus. Tonlock, mute that one, please. Listen, focus on my question, okay?
Yeah.
Now, I don't agree with you at all, but what I do like is that you're just being, you're trying to be very transparent and honest, okay? So I don't have a problem with you disagreeing with me, okay? But I simply ask you, do you believe that there is something that is eternal without beginning, that is ultimate and absolute, and that it is a mind, and that it instituted the creation? Do you accept that?
No.
Okay. Then you do not accept that dualistic framework where there's God and his creation. You don't accept the creation, the creator creation distinction. Okay?
No.
Okay. Now,
but I do.
Okay. All right. Well, then hold on a second. All right. So you do not accept the creator creation distinction. So where there's God and then there's his creation, that would be a twoism or dualism. Okay. So you probably have a conceptualization of existence, what we might call oneism or monism. You believe that there's just one system that all facts reside in. Okay. Is that your view?
No. What I believe here.
Okay. So is there more than, so do you believe that there's something other than the cosmos?
Yes.
Or the universe?
Okay. Yeah. You got to let me explain though.
Yeah, I'm listening.
I believe in God. Like, I do believe that there is something more to our existence in terms of humans. It's humans and who is above us. I don't believe that some mind created the earth. I believe, I believe in the fact that after death there is a life after death. There is eternal life.
Oh, okay. Listen. Do you believe that there is something that exists necessarily and eternally without beginning that accounts for that which is not eternal and begins to exist?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just not with creation.
Now, hey, could I ask? This isn't a drive-by, just a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
For the not to derail it, have you ever had a psychedelic experience with drugs? I'm not saying this is why you believe the things you do. Just curious.
Sabrina, he's asking you if you had a psychedelic experience.
No, I've never taken any hard drugs.
All right, that's fine. Okay, Sabrina.
I believe in keeping my body clean.
Okay, so you believe that there is some eternal principle or fundamental starting point out of which all things that begin derive and depend upon.
Not all things.
Well, then if how shall I explain this to you? If there are things in this world that do not derive from that eternal principle that is eternal, then why would those other things exist at all?
Because they would be based off a scientific reason.
Okay, you're clueless right now. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay.
No, I do.
No, you're not. All right, because we're not talking about science here. We're talking about metaphysics. We're not talking about science. No, you're not understanding. Metaphysics will come first before you can even start talking about science. Okay? Now, if something exists, anything exists at all, okay? Let me explain it to you. Okay? When you come home from school and you see there's a banana on the counter, right? Either the banana will be entirely yellow or it will not be entirely yellow. Do you understand that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's no middle ground. Okay. Now the banana might be half yellow and partly brown, or the banana might be entirely yellow, but it will either be one or the other. It will either be entirely yellow or not entirely yellow. Okay. Now, when it comes to things that exist or facts, a fact, whatever it is, will either be eternal or it will not be eternal. Okay? So if a fact is eternal, it doesn't derive from anything else. Okay? It just simply necessarily exists. But if a fact is not eternal, then it's going to have to derive and depend on that which is eternal. Unless, of course, you want to believe that something comes from nothing. And I don't think that you would be that stupid to say that.
Tell her that you're describing the law of non-contradiction.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, and it's the law of excluded middle. So the point is simply this: if you believe that there are any facts at all, they're either going to be in the category of being eternal or not eternal. If it's not eternal, then it will derive from what is eternal. Okay. Now, that which is eternal, we can say is ultimate, meaning there is nothing else. But you cannot coherently and intelligibly have two ultimacies, because that would be incoherent. All right? So there's going to have to be one unifying first principle, the ground of all being, that which is necessary and eternal, that is the reason why anything else at all exists. Okay? Are we clear?
Mm-hmm.
So, therefore, anything that is not eternal that you can conceive of and think of, it will derive from what is the unifying first eternal principle or entity. So in your view, okay, what is it specifically that is foundational and is a unifying first principle or ultimate? What would that be? It's not a trick question.
I still don't think it's God, though.
Okay.
We know that. He's asking you what it is.
Well, I know why you think that.
I think it's science, bro.
No, you're not understanding. Science can only come down the road later on. You don't even have a foundation for science yet. Okay. See, this is the problem in American education.
I'm not American.
Are you Canadian?
Yes.
Western education.
All right.
Western.
All right. I'm sorry to hear that you're Canadian.
I love it here. It's fine.
Yeah. Wait till you get older and you get in the real world.
America sucks.
Yeah, really. Yeah, you have no idea. At least we have, for the time being, free speech. You don't have that in Canada.
Yeah, we do.
Your Navy is one guy with
no, you really don't.
No. You don't have free speech. Try criticizing homosexuals or people in the LGBT alphabet soup mafia.
You could do it. Okay? It's just you would get reprimanded.
Oh, reprimanded. You'll either get a jail sentence or a fine.
Yeah, reprimanded.
Okay. Yeah. No. Reprimand. Oh. So you're going to get detention?
No. What?
How? Okay. Listen. How old?
Fine. Consequential.
How old are you?
I'm 16.
Okay. It shows.
In the United States, freedom of speech means no legal consequences for speech which does not contain a call to action, which is malicious.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not trying to knock your country, okay? But the United States, in the next couple of generations, we're headed toward the same way that Canada and Western Europe is. But
Yeah,
the bottom.
He's talking about the Western education system, not just.
Now the problem, yeah, in Western education, you've been brainwashed into essentially is a form of atheism, and you don't even know it. Okay, you've been brainwashed into what is okay. You laughed. You want me to prove it to you? Would you like me to prove it to you, Sunshine, Miss Smarty Pants?
Like, it's so like it doesn't like why is it so important?
Isn't it amazing?
You gotta be willing to have an open ear.
Listen, I'm going to ask you a question, and I don't want a smart aleck response. I don't expect you to agree with me, but don't be a smart aleck, okay?
Right.
Now, I'm not going to brag here, but I'm going to state something that's quite self-evident. I think I'm fairly well educated on the topics that I'm talking about, whether you agree with me or not. Okay. I'm also many times your age. Okay. I have over 4 more decades of life experiences than you do. I think I know just a little bit more than you do about stuff. Okay.
Okay.
What, Goose?
Don't worry about it.
You just gotta be willing to listen.
No. The problem is we have these young teenagers come in, usually males, and they have chutzpah, and they really think they know a lot more than they do. And they go, "Oh well, I follow science." I mean, do you know how easy it would be for me? Listen, you follow science, right? Okay, explain to me why is science meaningful and coherent in a world where all events are unrelated and unconnected? Can you explain that?
But you have to be more specific, though. Like,
why is science meaningful in a world of chance?
Yeah, you're in a world of chance where, since you're not omniscient, you cannot demonstrate that there are causal relations between events. You believe it. Can science demonstrate the causal principle in existence? Or is the causal principle just simply presumed in order for science to have any chance of being intelligible? Where do you get the causal principle from? What is it that institutes and secures the causal principle without which you couldn't even talk about science? Is there a causal principle in existence? Does it exist?
Yeah.
No. Okay. Could you explain to me how you know that the causal principle has been instituted and is secured, but you can't appeal to something that presupposes the causal principle, like sense perception?
Okay, let me. So
your mission is to tell me how is it that there is a causal principle among events without appealing to something that presupposes the causal principle.
So there's elements, right? Elements
how do you know?
Elements are the most basic form of.
No, you're not understanding. How do you know that there are connections between events based upon what? Why? Because you believe it? Does science depend on the belief that there are causal connections between events? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Good. Can you rationally justify that there are causal connections between events without appealing to sense perception, which would be presupposing causal connections? Can you justify causal connections without appealing to sense perception?
So, okay, are you saying like how something could happen?
I asked you a question, okay?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to clarify.
Do you believe that there are causal connections between any events?
Yeah, of course.
Good. Can you rationally justify that?
Yeah.
Good. How do you do so? And you can't appeal to sense perception.
Okay, so what I'm understanding from what you're saying is that there is connections between things that happen in different places, right?
I want you to justify. I want you to justify that there are any causal connections at all, and you can't appeal to sense perception. That's off limits.
When I slap my hand on the table, there's a sound. When I slap my hand, are those two events connected? Is the sound
yes, of course
connected to my hand?
Okay. Good. Now, how do you justify that they are? That they just didn't happen together?
Okay, because when you hit your hand on the table, it creates an audible sound because
No,
of
no,
two
no,
different
no.
materials hitting.
Stop right there. That's begging the question. Okay, what you're doing is you're simply stating the causal principle. You're not justifying it.
Okay.
Listen. Okay, I'm not trying to browbeat you. I'm really trying to inform you. I think you're a nice kid. Okay, I don't think you're dumb at all. Okay, I just think that Western education has done a great disservice to Western teenagers and children. Okay, suppose I said to you, there's green men under the surface of Mars, and you said,
Okay.
how do you justify that? And I say, well, underneath the surface of Mars there are green men.
That doesn't make any sense.
No,
exactly, but that's what you said.
I'm just repeating the same claim.
No, I wasn't. I was trying to explain the sound connected to the hand.
Sabrina, I didn't ask you to give me an explanation. I asked you to justify that that's true.
It's true because...
How do you know it's true?
I know it's true because of they can prove things like that.
Wait a minute. Doesn't the causal principle have to be true first before you can prove anything?
Okay, can you define to me what a causal principle is?
That there is
necessary.
There's a connection between two events.
Okay.
Yeah, cause and effect.
There's a cause and effect. Okay.
There's always a cause and effect.
All right, listen to me.
Yeah, how do you know that?
Listen to me. All you're just simply stipulating is what you devoutly believe. That's not a justification for it.
Okay, so then how do I explain this properly?
Well, the answer is you can't.
But there is a way to explain it.
No, there isn't.
Yes, there is.
No, there isn't. Listen to me.
Then do it. No, let's hear her do it.
I'm in my late 50s. I've studied this for a couple of years right now. There is no way short of divine revelation that you can demonstrate that there is a universal principle of the causal principle. You will appeal either to begging the question, simply restating the same claim in different words, or you're just going to appeal to intuition, which is not a justification. So once again, explain to me how you know that there is a connection between any two events. How do you know that? It's not a trick question. It's a philosophical question that you could never answer. See, I'm trying to show you that you've just been brainwashed in what is called scientism. Scientism is the ideology that the only beliefs that are worthy of holding are those that are confirmed via empirical endeavors. Okay, let me repeat that. Scientism is the ideology that teaches the only ideas or beliefs that are worthy of holding are those that are confirmed via empirical endeavors.
Let's put it this way. Do you believe that you got to test, observe, and repeat something to hold that it's true for everything?
Yes, of course.
How do you empirically verify that statement you just made?
You can't. That's the problem.
Everything is because there's ways to prove things are the way they are scientifically. We just haven't been able. We haven't been able to prove everything because we don't have the certain resources.
Let me explain something to you. Okay. Science is not in the position of determining truth. Science does not prove anything. Science comes up with theoretical constructs that seemingly are the best explanation for phenomenon. And if they have, let me finish. Okay. And if they come up with a theoretical explanation that seems to be best explains a phenomenon, and they have predictive success without failure, that conclusion is held provisionally, but it is not proven, because there could be an observation tomorrow that might falsify that with a better explanation.
Okay.
So nothing, listen carefully, and I'm going to quote to you the letter of a letter to the editor of the prestigious science magazine called Science, where somebody wrote in and criticized him, and the editor did not correct the writer, saying that science proves things. Science doesn't prove anything at all. It only comes to provisional conclusions. So, for example, suppose we had a group of scientists who did experiment after experiment after experiment, and then they said, we have proven that there cannot be a perpetual motion machine. Okay? We've tested it, we've repeated it, we've tested it, repeated it, and we tried it in all different variations. We tried it from all different angles. People have tried this all over the world, and we've proven that no matter how much we try, there cannot be a perpetual motion machine. Right?
Okay.
And suppose they have predicted capability without fail for the next 100 years. It will be held not as proven, but as a provisional conclusion. Because if the next day, after 100 years, somebody comes up and then they invent a true perpetual motion machine, then that would falsify the provisional conclusion and it wouldn't be proven. So all conclusions of science, from a colloquial sense, people say, oh, well, science proved that. It doesn't. They simply come to powerful provisional conclusions. The fact that you say science proves this, proves that, it means that the Western education that you have received was very poor. Your science teachers should have told you that science has come up with an array of provisional conclusions that are very powerful and are apparently very useful and have great predictive capability without fail. But that doesn't mean that it's proven. Did you know that Newton's concept of celestial mechanics seemed to work without fail until one day when they did work on a certain scale, and then they found out that Einstein's theory of relativity was far more accurate to a number of decimal places than Newton's mechanics?
Yeah.
But until we did these other testings, they thought that Newton's laws of motion had been proven. They weren't. Newton's laws are highly effective in describing how things work on a certain scale, but on all scales, they do not work. So I'm just trying to explain to you, you have been duped into believing that science is the only way and the best way to explain phenomenon in existence. This is entirely false. Because science cannot even explain, let alone defend, the actuality of the external physical world. Because any empirical endeavor would have to presuppose the reality of the external physical world. Science cannot prove the causal principle because it has to presuppose the causal principle even to engage in scientific endeavors. Science cannot prove that there are laws of nature. It has to presuppose them. Now, if you go on to college and you take a course or two in the philosophy of science, in the first week, they're going to go over the foundational presuppositions of science that science cannot prove, that science has to presuppose even in order to do science. Okay?
Yeah.
So science cannot tell us anything about metaphysics or the nature of reality foundationally. Okay? Science can come up with provisional conclusions, an array of them, that seemingly explain consistencies, and that's it. But they're not proven.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, so I've listened, and I'm not sure if I fully understand your argument, but I've been chatting with some people in the chat, and I think I know to some extent what you mean by your argument about, like, can you justify your epistemology, basically?
We would have won the game.
Yeah, you need to be specific because you're not being clear.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were talking about the transcendental argument, right? Earlier.
Way earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, that God is the necessary precondition for all facts, including human intelligibility.
If I'm gonna play devil's advocate,
yeah, do me a favor. Stop. You need to get closer to your mic source.
Hello?
Go ahead.
All right, so if I'm gonna play devil's advocate, how would you respond to the other epistemological systems or worldviews, or for example, we were talking about coherence theory or correspondence theory in the chat. How would you respond to that?
They have no ontological grounding for their epistemology.
Ontological grounding, what do you mean?
They have no metaphysical. They have no metaphysical basis for their theories of knowledge.
How so?
How are they going to ground what is ultimate and a unifying first principle for all facts?
Yeah, just name one. You can go through it and you can
know. One's theory of knowledge will only be meaningful, intelligible, and viable based upon your ontology, which will be your metaphysical grounding of what the nature of reality is. So epistemology is inherently dependent on your ontology, the nature of being. Okay? Epistemology, it necessitates a viable ontology, and vice versa. Do you understand? In order for me to know something, there has to be the ontological or metaphysical grounds for me to know. What if I'm in a world of chance where all events are spontaneous? Would there be any theory of knowledge that would be viable? The answer is no. Because you don't have ontological grounds for knowledge. A viable theory of knowledge is going to require a model of reality and its foundation that has the prerequisites for knowledge. Okay? So does that explain that to you?
Can I ask you something, Darth?
Yep, go ahead.
So it's Wingling here, just so you know who you're talking to. You keep
please
mentioning...
get closer to your microphone.
So you keep mentioning that we need a primary unifying principle or something to begin with.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why do we need that?
Because if you don't have that conceptually, then nothing exists.
Hello, Duncan.
Ahoy. If you don't have a first principle, why would anything exist?
But how do we know that you need a first principle?
Because without it, nothing would exist.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Well, if nothing is foundational, eternal, ultimate, absolute, why would anything at all exist?
There's only two ways for something to exist. It would have to exist eternally, or it would have to pop from absolutely nothing.
Yeah, surely you wouldn't want to believe that things pop into existence from nothing.
But you know the law of matter, that matter can't be created or destroyed.
How do you know that?
Do me a favor. You sound like you're talking into a big empty goblet of some kind. You have to get closer to your microphone, okay?
Is this better?
Yes. Yeah, you're quoting the first law of thermodynamics, okay? It's called the conservation of energy, right?
And I will admit straight up, I'm not a physicist.
Are you talking about that matter and energy can neither be created nor destroyed?
Yes.
Okay, so do you believe matter and energy is eternal?
Could it be? Isn't it possible?
Well, I didn't ask you to ask me. I'm asking you. Do you believe that?
that was going to be my next question, though. I was saying, like,
well, the first
you know,
law of
that law.
thermodynamics, the first law of thermodynamics is simply an inductive observation that there is no known natural or man-made way by which matter and energy can be destroyed or created. That is not a stipulation metaphysically that matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed. And in fact, the Bible makes it very clear that it is God who created ex nihilo. He created into nothing, and he sustains all that exists. And if it by his will, and if he ceased to will, then everything would stop to exist with the exception of God himself. So if you're going to take the first law, if you're going to take the first law of thermodynamics as a metaphysical universal, then I'm going to ask you on what grounds you got that from, because you're not omniscient.
So I would agree with you that that law is based on current observations, that we've never observed matter being created or destroyed by anyone.
Before we go on, do you assert that God is the necessary precondition for all facts?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
But even if God is a necessary being for the universe to exist, or a primary, transcendental, whatever, that would get you to deism. But how do we know that it's the Christian God?
Because human intelligibility for the world around them is going to require a property set that only the Christian God possesses. Deny those one or more properties, and you will incinerate human intelligibility.
So you're saying that no other theism or religion explains intelligibility?
No, they do not have the property set that is requisite for human intelligibility.
What's the property set?
That God is eternal, ultimate, absolute, unconditionally non-dependent, omniscient, omnipotent, always truth revealing, and has a sovereign providential plan, including a salvific plan that he has instituted and will carry to completion. If that property set, and also that of his triune nature, without which there cannot be human intelligibility. No other God can and does have the property set of the Christian God. But why would you be positing any other God when you categorically reject them? The reason why is you're on the run from God. That's why.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You want to retain your own personal autonomy, okay? Because if you don't, then that means you have to submit to God's autonomy, but you don't want to do that. So you come up with all these little atheist cliches that you think are philosophically adept, but they're not.
Do you believe
atheism? Let me just finish.
Yeah.
Atheism is a self-contradiction. Do you know why? It's because in order to deny God, you would have to have the capacity to affirm or deny things at all. But that's going to require that the God of the Bible exists. So atheism is a self-contradiction. God is the necessary precondition for all facts, including affirmation or denial. How could you, let me ask you this question. How could you affirm or deny anything if you don't know what is the unifying first principle or ultimacy that prescribes possibility and impossibility? Let me repeat that, okay? How could you affirm or deny anything if what is metaphysically primary, or the unifying first principle that prescribes possibility and impossibility, is unattainable or unknown? You wouldn't be able to affirm or deny anything. Somebody might say, well, I do affirm things. I affirm there are rocks on the moon. Yeah, well, just merely saying the words is not a justification. It's just an empty, arbitrary claim. So without God, the God of the Bible, you wouldn't even be able to say the sky is blue and defend it. Okay?
But you're saying that it must be the God of the Bible because of these properties that he possesses, supposedly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the unique property set.
Yeah, if you deny God's property set, either on the whole or in part, it's game over.
God is omnipotent, omniscient. He is always truth revealing. These are the sorts of properties you need for intelligibility.
Look, if you're going to say,
how do you know?
If you're going to make any statement of what is or cannot be, that's a statement of possibility and impossibility. Well, there has to be something that is a unifying first principle or a metaphysical grounding, okay, and ultimacy, right? A metaphysical primary. That will then prescribe what is possible and impossible, not describe, prescribe. If you do not account and attest to that which is that unifying first principle, that metaphysical primary, then on what grounds do you say anything is possible? The answer is you wouldn't. You would just simply asserting possibility in virtue of your imagination or intuition about the nature of affairs, but you don't know how things operate at all.
Isn't it possible that we just don't know yet?
How would you know that?
What do you mean we don't? Isn't it possible you don't know? On what grounds could you know anything?
How would you?
What we observe?
Knowing, okay, listen.
On what grounds could you say you don't know something?
Knowing the apprehension and acquisition of knowledge is a possibility. What would prescribe that?
I don't know.
Well, I
don't know that there's anything that prescribes anything.
No, well, guess what? Then what you just said is
contradiction.
When you said I know that I don't know such and such. Okay, your position when you say I don't know X, you're telling me that you know that you don't know X. But on what grounds can you know anything? What is it that prescribes? No. Well, a brain. How could you know something because there are unrelated and unconnected events? You believe that the world around you operates in some law-like regular ways and according to causal principle. What would institute or instantiate, right, and prescribe the causal principle and laws of nature? What prescribes that?
Why do we need anything to prescribe that?
Because you couldn't have anything at all.
Because then there would, if there's nothing that prescribes possibility and impossibility, you couldn't talk about a brain.
Anything's possible if nothing prescribes.
Listen to me. If anything is possible, then it completely destroys human intelligibility. Because then if you say, I have a brain, I can say, that's right, you don't have a brain, and you couldn't object. Because you could have a brain and not have a brain at the same time in the same sense, and you couldn't object to that.
I can demonstrate that I have a brain.
Right, and I can say when you demonstrate you have a brain, that would also show that you don't have a brain.
You have a brain because pink elephants spit bubblegum balls on the moon.
No, you said I can demonstrate X, but in a world with no grounding, where you don't know what is possible and impossible, then demonstration is unintelligible. There's no grounds for demonstration because you don't know what's possible.
Is demonstrating things even possible?
Look, by demonstrating, you say I can demonstrating. You're saying is, the past and the present work like this, and it will continue in the future. How do you know any consistencies in the past will continue into the future? Do you know the future will be like the past?
We assume that, but we don't know it.
Okay, if you don't know it, okay, hold on a second. Good. Then if you don't know it, you can't make statements into the future, can you?
Tell her about the law of the format.
Yeah, you said I can state that. That was a statement into the future. But you don't know the future will be like the past.
Tell her about
See, all I'm trying to show you, you're on a desperate run from the God that you know is the God of Christianity, but you do not want to give up your autonomy. So you come up with all these pseudo-intellectual, philosophical meanderings by which you think you can escape God, like, well, there's no evidence for God, or you haven't demonstrated God. But you see, your foundational principles from which you reason from aren't demonstrated either. So when you say there's no evidence for God, that's just an arbitrary hand up going, It's just arbitrary because you don't follow that principle. Okay? Okay, you say you say you can demonstrate you have a brain. Is there a metaphysical foundation for demonstrability in your world?
A metaphysical.
Yeah, metaphysical means on a worldview scale foundationally. Is there something that institutes and secures possibility and impossibility, including demonstrability? Is there something that prescribes that? Is there something that institutes and secures that?
Why do we need something to do that?
You couldn't have anything at all, man.
Because what do you mean? Why do you need something? Because if you're going to claim that something is or can be, I want to know why. Otherwise, why do you need it? Because then all your declarations or propositions would be arbitrary. Do you accept arbitrary declarations? How about I said to you, God exists, therefore God exists. Do you accept that?
No.
Okay, good. So you want to believe in God on certain grounds. So when you say I can demonstrate I have a brain, what is the most foundational underpinnings or foundation metaphysically that provides for demonstrability and reason? What is it about the nature of reality? And it's got to be foundational. What is it that instantiates and prescribes what's possible and impossible? Because demonstrability for your brain would be within the realm of possibility and impossibility. What institutes and secures possibility and impossibility? If you say, I don't know, then you don't know that there's a basis for demonstrability, do you?
Isn't it based on what we observe?
I'm having trouble. Listen, you got to fix your microphone.
He said,
isn't it based on what we observe in the natural world?
What do you mean?
Can you observe things? Is that possible?
Okay, well, does observing things presuppose the causal principle and laws of nature?
We can observe the laws of nature at
No,
work.
you're evading my question.
The laws of nature.
Does your claim that observation is going on presupposing the causal principle, that there are causal relations between events?
Yes.
Okay. Did something institute and secure that?
No.
What?
Good. Then your claiming it's there is completely arbitrary.
But
then your position is stuff just happens for no rhyme or reason. It just happens.
But I thought you wanted the basis to believe something.
So I'm presupposing the universality of nature.
It's time to give you the law of the farmer. Okay. Little chicken is hatched from his egg, and as he's growing day by day, week by week, every morning the farmer comes out at 9 o'clock in the morning and he spreads grain and corn, and the chicken's like, wow, this is great. You get free food every day. Okay. And every day for 15 years, the farmer comes out, he spreads corn, he spreads grain, and all the chickens, buck, 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 and they're eating the grain and the corn up, right? And then one day, the first day of the 16th year, this chicken who's now 15-year-old meets a new chicken, okay? It's a little baby chick. And the 15-year-old chicken's getting excited because it's 8:59. The little chicken's, what are you getting so excited for? He goes, the farmer's going to come out. He goes, how do you know that? He goes, well, the farmer's going to come out and feed us, throw free food to us. How do you know that? Do you know the future? Yeah, it's the law of the farmer. He goes, well, what's the law of the farmer? He goes, every day I've been alive, the farmer comes out at 9 a.m., he spreads the grain around, things like that. And the little chicken says to the older chicken, he goes, so what? Just because the past has been consistent is no guarantee that it'll happen in the future. And the chicken says, oh no, I have predictive capability. Watch. Every day for the next 365 days, that farmer's going to come out at 9 o'clock in the morning and he's going to spread. And I predict you tomorrow there's going to be free food on the ground. And the next day, and the next, and the next. And sure enough, every day for the next 364 days, the farmer comes out, right? And on the 365th day, the big chicken's strutting around and says, see, I told you I had predictive capability. And then he's caught by the neck. The farmer puts him on the chopping block, cuts his head off, and brings it in to feed his wife. So much for the law of the farming. Okay? That's
So
how you're that's how you are reasoning just like the chicken.
What he's describing to you is called the problem of induction.
Yeah, it's the problem of induction. Okay, the point is, and the problem of induction is that inductive reasoning cannot just justify uniformity or laws of nature. It can't justify the causal principle. Before you can have laws of nature, you have to have the causal principle, that there's a causal connections between events. Now, if you don't acknowledge, attest, or account for what instantiates it and what secures it, the continuity of it, then for all you know, the causal principle is just simply stuff that happens by chance. And it could happen, it happened yesterday, it might not happen today. But you don't even know that there's a causal principle, because you don't know that it actually has been instituted, that in a chance world, it just appears like there are causal connections. You see,
Have you heard of the idea that we seek agency where
you
there is
believe,
none?
listen to me, you believe all of this stuff by intuition. You're completely unaware that you're reasoning by intuition. You're not reasoning by a rational justification. Okay? And yet, you want to say, I want a rational justification for God, but when it comes to the foundational parameters of your world, you don't operate by rational justification. You operate by intuition, which means you're arbitrary in your criterion of belief.
Did you have a question? I heard you say something.
Have you heard of the idea that people see agency where there is none?
Yeah, you mean people see certain forms.
So isn't it possible that when people look at themselves and the attributes they have, that they come up with the idea that something must have given them those attributes, and whatever that is has to contain the same attributes?
You're talking about what is called pareidolia. Pareidolia.
Yes, that.
Okay, let me read you the definition. Pareidolia is the tendency for the incorrect perception of a stimulus as an object, pattern, or meaning known to the observer, such as seeing shapes in clouds, seeing faces, okay? What you're actually doing, because you've been brainwashed into Darwinism, that you're saying, well, you know, believing that there was a designer to all this complexity used to be a good explanation, but now we know it's pareidolia, because now we know that the physical world through natural selection produces design from the bottom up, not top down. So thinking that there's a creator because we see all of this complexity is like seeing faces in the cloud. But you see, then I can just simply saying is, you're seeing causal connections just like pareidolia because there's a conjunction between events, but that doesn't demonstrate there are causal connections, because those relationships could happen by chance. And how would you be able in a non-Christian worldview to differentiate between what is chance versus what are causal relations or necessity? Imagine you go on a cruise ship. Imagine you go on a cruise ship, right? And suppose, I meet you on the cruise ship and we go into the casino and I roll the dice and they come up sevens and it's a winning roll. I roll sevens again. And after about 20 rolls, I get 20 rolls of seven in a row. Now, the casino manager is going to think that I'm now cheating because I've used weighted dice as of bringing the sevens up 20 times by necessity. So when he comes over to look at the dice, I take them, I throw them out over the railing, and they go into the sea. They're inaccessible. How will he be able to rationally determine whether my 20 rolls of 7 are the result of happenstance or by necessity? How could he do so?
By controlling for extraneous factors.
That was a throwaway phrase that's meaningless. How could he make, without access to the dice, how would he be able to rationally determine that the roll of the dice was purely random and just came up consistently as sevens? Okay. Have you ever heard of the gambler's fallacy? The gambler's fallacy is when they think that, well, you know what? My roll didn't come up the last 15 times, so it's got to come up now. That's the gambler's fallacy. And that's very similar to the situation here. Is it possible for me to roll sevens twice in a row?
Of course.
How about 3 times?
Yep.
How about 10 times?
It's unlikely, but it's possible.
I didn't ask you if it was likely. I didn't ask you if it's likely. I said, can it happen? 20? Can it happen? Is there anything that would prohibit it?
No.
Okay, could I do it 100 times?
Sure. Yes.
Could I do it 1,000 times?
Yep.
How about 1,000,000 times?
Yep, we could keep going to infinity.
How about 1,000,000,000,000 times 1,000,000,000,000?
Where are we going with this?
Well, I'm pointing out to you, is there any level of consistency of events that cannot be produced by happenstance or chance?
Wait, can you ask that again?
Is there any level of sequencing or amount of sequencing, a consistent sequencing, that cannot happen? I mean, could I roll the number 7 1,000 times in a row, but 1,010 times I couldn't? Is there something that prescriptively would prevent that from ever happening?
So, are you referring to the way that scientists?
I'm asking you a question in order to educate you on a point. Can I get any level of consistency of events by happenstance? Is there anything that prescriptively would prevent an innumerable number of consistencies? Is there anything that would prevent that by necessity?
I don't know. I feel like I don't understand the question.
Okay. Is it? Could I roll 100 sevens in a row? Is there something that prevents that?
No.
Is there anything that would prevent me from getting 1,000,000,000,000 sevens in a row?
No.
Okay. So if you have a series of consistencies in this world, a conjunction of events, maybe it's causation, maybe it's not. Okay. Okay. The point is, when you reject the revelation of the Christian God, who you know entered this world to save your soul from sins, and you reject his self-disclosure, you are plunged into incoherency, but you don't realize it because you're not being ruthlessly introspective and self-aware. You do not have the ability left to yourself to differentiate a chance world versus a world that is governed by necessity. There is no way for you to rationally justify it outside of the Christian worldview.
So I would admit that
let me just say one more thing. You have no fundamental principle or starting point that you can stand on to say what can be or cannot be. If you don't have grounds to assert what can or cannot be, then you have no grounds for knowledge. You have no grounds for intelligibility. Okay?
So I would admit that science is based on assumptions, but it would seem that your position is also based on assumptions, and that's the assumption that a God must exist as a necessary condition for the world to exist.
No, it's not an assumption. Yeah, we don't claim that we're merely assuming God. We're saying that God has taken the initiative to reveal himself in natural and special revelation. We start with natural revelation, okay? Romans 1. Ever since the beginning of the creation of the world, God's eternal powers and attributes have been clearly seen through what has been made, okay?
And how would you personally know we are assuming that?
Okay, so God's invisible eternal powers have been seen through what has been made. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Are you talking to us now through a computer?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe the phenomenon that you're seeing on the screen is produced either in part or in whole through Wi-Fi signals?
In part, yes.
Good. Can you see Wi-Fi signals?
No, not with your eyes.
No. So you believe that there are Wi-Fi signals because you are inferring and extrapolating from what you do see to indicate what is unseen. We know that God exists because all facts individually and collectively, including our own personalism, indicates that the unifying first principle is a personal God. Otherwise, we wouldn't be personal and have apprehension of all these facts. So God has revealed himself in that. Now, if you don't accept what I just said, then you will be making a counterclaim that you are personal and rational, and that the ground of all being is impersonal and non-rational, and that the impersonal begets the personal. Do you think it's coherent to say cats beget kittens? Is that coherent?
Yes.
Okay. Is it coherent to say an impersonal ultimacy begets a personalism?
I got him.
See, you believe that impersonalism on a metaphysical foundation begets personalism. That's an antithesis. Explain to me how personalism emerges or is begotten from impersonalism. You see, we are not simply saying we assume God. We're saying God has revealed himself through natural revelation. Because I am a personal rational being, and I have personal apprehension of an array of facts around me, and those facts indicate a unifying first principle. That unifying first principle has to be personal and a mind as well. Otherwise, I couldn't be. Now, that is natural revelation. So it's not an assumption. But if you don't accept that as God taking the initiative to communicate to us by disclosure through that method, right? Then what you will be claiming, if you don't accept it, is that impersonalism at a foundational level begets personalism, you. How does explain to me how personalism is exuded or begotten from impersonalism? Explain that to me.
I would say that natural revelation of God is an example of pareidolia.
Okay, of course you would,
Yeah,
because of course you would say that, because you are trying to come up with any cliche or slogan to rationalize your autonomy, which upon examination is incoherent. Now, I asked you a question. If you if you do not accept that we can know God through his self-disclosure because he makes us know because we are personal, that the only way we could be personal and have apprehension of facts is because both my personalism and the facts derives from what is a unifying first principle, and that it is personal, because the personal begets the personal. But you believe that the impersonal begets the personal, don't you?
Sure.
Yeah, that's
Right.
like saying cats beget pelicans.
Yeah, yeah. Cats beget golf carts. Okay. Ice cream cones beget bald eagles. Explain to me how it's meaningful, rational, coherent, and intelligible that what is ultimate and eternal and impersonal would beget something personal. Explain that to me. And oh, by the way, a little heads up, saying it's an emergent property of evolution is begging the question.
How so?
How so? Because all you would simply be arguing is because of natural selection and billions of years, there's an increasing level of sentience, and once sentience reaches a certain height, then it equates to personalism and being rational. But that's begging the question.
It's just reasserting the same claim that the rational emerges from the irrational.
Right. And by the way, either way you dice it or slice it, whether you if you say that personalism emerges from the impersonal, you're either going to have to appeal to a chance world or a cause and effect law-driven world, and either way you can't derive personalism from it. Because if you're personal and rational and you have rational apprehension of facts, then your mental states, okay, could not exist as rational choices if everything were the cascading dominoes of cause and effect over billions of years. Therefore, whatever mental state you have in a time index, it was billions of the years in the making. You didn't choose any of your thoughts, okay? And in fact, you would not have a mind. If naturalism and materialism is true, and cause and effect, there are cause and effect and laws of nature, then there cannot be minds, okay? And therefore, if there can't be minds, you wouldn't be personal. Okay? Could you be personal without a mind?
Sure. Yep.
What?
Oh, explain to me how something can be personal without a mind.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Do you believe that animals have minds or souls?
No, they don't.
No.
Animals are just biological robots. We anthropomorphize them. When people have
my
pets,
pet dog is not personal?
No, it is
Nope.
not. Absolutely not.
I
You're
would
anthropomorphizing. You're anthropomorphizing. Please. You're anthropomorphizing your dog's reaction to you. Okay. You know what anthropomorphizing is? You ever hear of pareidolia?
Yes. Yes, I know what
Aren't
they
you
mean.
aren't you guilty of pareidolia?
The religion of one age is the literary entertainment of the next.
Okay. Did you get him, Tonlock?
I got him.
Okay. See, remember you talked about pareidolia? You're trying to see reason where the reason doesn't exist. You're committing
I believe
pareidolia.
that animals have minds.
No,
so
of course you do. That's pareidolia.
Yeah.
Yeah, bingo.
Yeah,
what goes around comes around.
Weaponized.
Pareidolia is for non-animate things.
No. Oh, no, honey.
Special
No, it doesn't.
pleading.
Yeah, clouds are animate, baby. The last time I checked, clouds are moving.
Yes.
Clouds are ever changing and animate. So you have now succumbed to pareidolia, where you're seeing personalism and reason where none exists. Bingo.
Ooh.
Now, the point is simply this.
Pareidolia
The
is for
reason why you
non-animate.
come up with these atheist cliches is because you do not want to give up your autonomous reasoning. Autonomous reasoning is that your mind is supreme and it does not necessitate your mind being in submission to God. Because you say, well, why would my mind be in need of submission to God when you haven't justified there's God? You haven't proven God. But you don't follow that principle because your foundational beliefs aren't proven. Are they?
They don't need to be.
Then why does God need to be?
Exactly.
Because you're the one making the positive claim that a God
Okay,
exists.
wow, that was
There it is.
you know what? Here we go again. You see, it never fails. And by the way, I don't dislike you. I don't think you're stupid. Okay, so I don't want you to think that we're trying to pile on here. But what you just said was just an atheist cliche that you grabbed out of the grab bag of atheist cliches. You see, listen to me carefully. I'm speaking out of a worldview where my irreducible primary or my unifying first principle is a personal absolute. Your first principle, your unifying first principle, is an impersonal absolute. Because if you deny that you're starting from either a personal, would you get him, please?
Okay, I got him.
Okay, you gotta keep a watch on this, especially the top half. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll keep a watch on the bottom half of the screen of the names.
Right.
You keep a watch on the top half. Okay.
Yep.
Now, here's the problem. When you say I'm making the positive claim, do you know what you just implicitly claimed about yourself? Is she still here? No, she left. When she said I'm making the positive claims, she was implicitly claiming she's neutral. You see that?
Yep.
In other words,
it never fails.
I'm just unpersuaded. No, that's simply not true, because you're persuaded that there is a unifying first principle or an impersonal absolute that prescribes possibility and impossibility, out of which you can be a personal being and reason. Okay? So when she says, well, you're making the positive claim, whenever they say you're making a positive claim, they're making a counterclaim that they're being neutral. They're making a category error, as though we were talking about a non-transcendental like gold on Mars. Okay? See, this is ubiquitous among atheists and unbelievers. It is ubiquitous among them that they actually have talked themselves into believing that they're neutral. And you see, this is where Van Til hits the nail on the head. They claim that they're being humble. They're claiming that they're undecided, that you're the one making the positive claim. I'm not making a positive claim either directly or indirectly. I'm not making a positive claim either explicitly or implicitly. Oh, yes, you are. You are implicitly claiming that your reason and other facts, either individually or collectively, are standalone without reference to God. But they couldn't be standalone without respect to a unifying first principle or a metaphysical primary of what is ultimate. And in their case, it'll be an impersonal ultimate. Yeah, I know. I'm talking to everybody in the room.
Oh, sorry.
So she's not neutral. She hasn't proven or demonstrated her impersonal absolute or unifying first principle, out of which all possibility and impossibility is prescribed. So this is what the atheists do. They are guilty. They accuse us of special pleading. They're the ones who are guilty of special pleading. Because on the one hand, they're pleading that we demonstrate our unifying first principle. They demand we demonstrate our irreducible primary. Okay, but when it comes to their metaphysical primary, they just say, well, I don't have to prove it. You see the double standard, folks? Okay, what did Bonson say? They're not neutral, you're not neutral, and we shouldn't be neutral.